Hello, my grots and gits, and welcome back to Happy Crumpin' Wargaming. I am pumped up to be bringing this video to you today. One of the things that I tend to notice in competitive 40K is that the really good people tend to just get better, and it can feel like a total slog trying to catch up to them. So what I want to do today is I want to bring the top 5 beginner tips to get you crushing people in 40K. If you're a beginner, if you're an intermediate, these 5 things are going to elevate your game to the next level. I go over these things with most of my coaching clients because even people who are experienced sometimes are failing on one or more of these tips. So let's break it down, and I'm gonna be very excited when I start seeing some messages down in the chat that are talking about how this helps with their games. So let's get right into it. By the way, if you guys see something that I missed here, you have tips that I'm not thinking about right here, I want you to type them down in the comments down below so that other people can also benefit from your experience and knowledge. Let's break it down. Number 5. Here's the deal, guys. You must know the rules. And one of the really crazy things is that a lot of people just have never read the rule packet. And I know it's a chore to read through that document, but the reality is that the core rules will take you about 20 minutes to read. And once you read them, you're going to understand the game at a much higher level. I cannot tell you how many times I've been playing or doing coaching calls with people who don't understand how to do a fight phase activation, because they actually never read the rules. They may have skimmed them once, but they never read the rules. When you read the rules commentary, and you read the balanced data slate, you're going to have a much higher level of understanding of the game. And while this might sound obviously you're going to know the game better, what I find is most people who say they've read the rules have never actually, maybe they read them once at the beginning of the edition and then they never went back and read them again. So every now and then just go back and read the rules again, because you will find certain things. Also, with the way that GW is doing a great job of keeping the game balanced and up to date, they're changing things in the rules commentary. So it's worth a look every few months just to go through the rules commentary to see some things that have changed. For example, now indirect weapons can never hit on better than a 4+. And if you didn't know that because you haven't read up the rules commentary, you're going to be a step behind, but it really does not take very much of your time. Now, this is something that I'm here to help with because this channel is dedicated to making sure that you understand all of these rules. But if you go and read that rule packet, I promise you're going to notice some things that you didn't notice before. And you're going to notice things like this. You're going to understand that once you start an activation in the fight phase, the start of the activation is the pile-in. So once you pile into your opponents, even if they have the fight's first ability, they can't fight before you because your fight starts with the pile-in. And once you understand that, it's going to make you a much better player. Let's go into tip number 2, or number 4. Do not get gotcha'd. This is a really, really important thing that I notice a lot of people tend to they get gotcha'd in a game because they just didn't understand a mechanism, or they didn't understand a special rule of the army that they were playing against. And most of the time, this is not intentional. 40K is a very complex game with an insane amount of rules in it. Well, even myself, a professional player who basically lives and breathes this stuff, I don't know every single data sheet and every single stratagem in the entire game. So what I've done is I've created a list of questions I always ask my opponent pre-game. It takes me about 1 minute to get through all of them, and I don't mind taking a minute of my time to ask the questions to make sure that I understand any unique or new interactions I haven't come across before I play the game. This gives me a much higher win rate, and I very, very highly recommend you do it in every single one of your games, especially in your tournament games, but honestly, especially in your practice games when you're playing with your opponents, with your friends, and you guys are just trying to learn your armies. Definitely do this so that what happens is that you're going to grow your knowledge. So here's the questions, okay? The first question you ask: how much does your army give up on assassinate and bring it down? This can help inform you whether or not you're going to be taking primary or what secondaries that you're going to be taking for the game. Then, do you have access to advance, fallback, and shoot and charge? Because if you do, it's going to change the threat ranges that your opponent has access to. So if your opponent is nothing but infantry and they only move 6 inches, basically what you can do is you can make sure that your entire army stands 18.1 inches away from your opponent's army and he can't possibly charge you. Now, if he has access to advance and charge, that won't work, because suddenly he can move, maybe he rolls a 3 on the advance, so he moves 9 inches, and if you're 18.1 inches away, now you're only 9 inches away, now he has a 9-inch charge. So this can give you the ability to know how much you need to measure when you are playing against your opponent. Then, do you have access to free CP? So, for example, if your opponent has Azrael from the Dark Angels, they generate 2 CP at the start of the battle round, not 1. This is really important for your planning because let's say you're going second, right? And you know that your opponent has a 2 CP stratagem that he really wants to use, and he can't use it because you only get 1 CP in turn 1. Well, some of these armies will get 2 CP in turn 1, which will really seriously change the way that you have to interact with them. What's your melee threat range turn 1? That's basically what we just said. If you move 6 inches, your threat range is going to be 18 inches, right? Because you move 6, you can charge a maximum of 12. If you move 12, that's going to be a threat range of 24. What's your shooting threat range? Same question, just with the range of shooting guns. Do you have access to scout, infiltrate? Well, infiltration is a really big deal because if your opponent has infiltrate, they get to deploy much closer to you, which can absolutely change the way that you are going to play. And it's going to change the way that you scout move if you have scouts, because you can't scout within 9 inches of your opponent's enemy models, right? Then, do you have any reactive movement? This is really important. You've got things like Phantasm, Blood Surges. All these things will dramatically change the way that you have to play the game, so you need to know about it. Then the last catch-all question I always ask my opponents, and I find this to be the very best one, so write it down and ask your opponents this. When I'm done with all these questions, I go, is there anything else that is odd about your army that you would like to know if it was your first time playing against your army? Now, this is a great catch-all question that will absolutely help your opponent make you understand what their army does. For example, Grey Knight players have the ability to use Mist of Deimos to pick one of their units back up into reserve, and then they can also spend a CP to rapid ingress that same unit down in the same turn. This is an interaction that if you know the rules perfectly, you'll understand works, but it's such a strange and weird interaction that occurs nowhere else in the game that you're not going to think about it unless you have experience in a Grey Knights. So when you ask a question like this, that can dawn it on the Grey Knight opponent, be like, oh, right, he won't understand the way that works, so let me tell him. That doesn't mean they need to warn you about it in-game when you're playing. Like, if you fall for the trap, you fall for the trap. But now you're armed with the knowledge so that you can choose to avoid the trap if you want to. Cool. Let's move on to the next tip to improving our play as beginners or even intermediates. Measure. I don't care if you get a tattoo on your fingers. I've actually got a really good buddy who actually has this tattooed on his hand, and it's totally hilarious. But many times what will happen in this game is people will hope that they're going to be able to make a charge, or they're going to hope or think that they're going to be in range to shoot, only to find out that they end up not being within range to shoot. What I mean by pre-measure, what I want you to do is, before your unit has moved, I want you to measure how far it is from your unit to where you need to go. So if you're trying to plan on a 5-inch charge and your opponent is standing 15 inches away from you, you know that you must move 10 inches. So before you move your 6 inches and you think that it's going to be an 8-inch charge, what you're going to realize, you're going to move your 6 inches and you realize it's, oh crap, that would be a 9-inch charge. So perhaps you don't go for that unless you, have access to advance and charge or something in that vein. So you pre-measure, so you're not going to be surprised later on when your charge is actually a 9-inch charge and not an 8 like you were hoping it would be. Once you do this, once you're done moving, you actually get to realize that the charge is oh my gosh, sorry guys, let me stop. So I just basically explained all that. Now, this will also apply to your things like screening, move blocking, your blocking of your deep strikes, your rapid ingresses, and even your scout moves, okay? So once you have pre-measured, what you'll notice is that, okay, it's my turn 2, my opponent's going to rapid ingress in my turn. So what I have to do is I have to put like a 9-inch measurement around all of my models so that I understand where my opponent can actually rapid ingress. When you do that, your opponent will never be able to rapid ingress into that super annoying spot that you don't want them to rapid ingress into, because you're going to be able to block and you're going to see where they can rapid ingress before they ever get the opportunity to do it. So pre-measure everything. This is actually probably the top piece of advice I just give. I think this is the number one piece of advice I probably give to people. It's this homework I give to all of my coaching clients. I always make sure that they pre-measure everything. Like, your homework for this week is at all of your games. I don't care if you win. I don't care if you lose. I want you to pre-measure every distance so that you are armed with the knowledge that you need to crush your foe. Now, the tip all the way down to number 2, this is a really good one, okay? You need to learn how to prioritize, all right? You must have an idea of what you need to accomplish in this turn. Now, the ultimate thing that you have to accomplish every single game is you need to score more victory points than your opponent. Every single turn, the way you accomplish this might change. For example, if you draw Area Denial and you draw Secure No Man's Land, what you might have to do is get a unit into the middle of the battlefield, within 3 inches of it at least. Well, when you do this, this will prioritize what you have to accomplish this turn. So let's say that you have 2 units that you really need to, that you're going to plan on advancing somewhere, right? But you only have the ability to reroll one of those advances. And let's say that you need a 4-inch advance to get your unit in the middle of the battlefield so that you can score 2 points for Secure No Man's Land and 5 points for Area Denial. Well, you need to make sure that this unit rolls a 4-up or whatever I said on their advance. So you want to roll that advance first, just in case you have to use your CP to reroll that advance. You wouldn't want to advance somewhere else and then accidentally spend a CP to reroll that, to then go back to your unit that you need to get into the middle, realizing, oh crap, I can't reroll it. Now I just don't get those points just because I was silly and I didn't prioritize the units that I need to move. Prioritization also applies to when you're fighting or when you're shooting. For example, if you have a unit that's got a bunch of damage 1 shots and some multiple damage shots, like some damage 3 shots, and you're shooting into a unit of Blade Guard veterans who have 3 wounds each, and one of those models is already down to 1 wound because it was injured somewhere else, you don't want to start your shooting with your damage 3 shots. You want to start your shooting with the damage 1 shots so that you can maximize the damage that you do because you're prioritizing the correct order of shooting your weapons. So this is a really big deal. You can also prioritize point value trades. So, for example, let's go back to that exact same scenario where we're trying to score Area Denial. Is it better for me to advance a squad of scouts who cost 65 points to score me Area Denial when I know they're going to be out in the open and my opponent's going to be able to kill them very easily next turn? Or should I advance my unit of, I don't know, super soldiers who are my biggest, most powerful unit possible? Maybe, should I do my scouts or should I do my Land Raider Redeemer? Well, I might not want to do it with my Land Raider Redeemer, although I might for other reasons, because my Land Raider Redeemer costs 285 points, and if it's going to be going up there to get me my Area Denial, my opponent's going to be very happy for me to score those 5 victory points, because then he gets to pick up and kill my Land Raider Redeemer for free. Now, if I use a unit of scouts, that's only 65 points, and even though my opponent's still going to get to kill them, they more than earn their points value in the victory points that they have done. So, plan your turn. Don't just randomly move around a table. Prioritize everything. I highly recommend what you do is at the beginning of every single turn, you pause for 2 minutes and you separate your turn into primary and secondary goals. This is a little different than primary and secondary objectives, but what I know that I have to do, no matter what I do this turn, I have to get a unit within 3 inches of the center of the battlefield. That's my number 1 priority. So everything else I'm going to do, that is the number 1 thing I'm going to do. After that, I'm going to look at making sure I'm in correct position. And then after I'm in correct position with the rest of my units, maybe then I can worry about how am I going to deal damage to my enemy. Just for example. So split it into primary and secondary goals. And then lastly, the number 1 piece of advice that I can ever give to a newer or even an intermediate or even an advanced player. You need to get a qualified mentor or a gaming group. This can be a friend who's been playing for a really long time. This can be a coaching service, hint, hint, that someone on the internet who's super awesome and loves all of his subscribers might offer. This can be a local gaming club, or this can be a Discord group. Also, hint, hint, the Happy Crumpin' Wargaming Discord group is an amazing place for players to develop their skill. But essentially what you need is you need people who are better than you. You can't just be the best person in your group of friends because you're not going to get better when you're the best person in your group of friends. It just won't happen. So you need a group of other people who can see the flaws in your thinking, who can help you develop as a player. Now, this is true for all aspects of life. You are the sum of the 5 people who are closest to you. Well, it's true for our gaming and our ability to strategize and create tactics as well. We need to be around other people who are thinking in depth about the game who can help us develop. So get in a high-level Discord like the Happy Crumpin' Wargaming Discord server. Get with a high-level local gaming club. Get a coach. Or just get a good friend who's been playing for a long time who can help to mentor you. Of course, that good friend's also going to have to do these things as well so that they can continue to develop as well. These are the number 5 things that you can do immediately to start improving your game at Warhammer 40,000. There's a lot more. I got a lot more coming. If I missed something that you're already considering, type it down in the chat, in the comments down below. Let's see what you got. See if there's any other great tips for beginners out there. And I'm really excited to see what you come up with. So, until next time, this was Happy Crumpin' Wargaming. Thank you all for your attention, and I'll catch up with you next time. Later.